Father!" Amara cried, rushing to his side. The palace guards stormed in, their eyes wide with panic. "What happened to the king?" one of them asked, stepping forward. Amara's hands shook as she gripped her father's shoulders, her face twisted in what looked like deep sorrow. But it was all an act. "I don't know," she stammered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "We were just talking, and then he collapsed." Her voice broke, filled with the perfect amount of panic and grief. The guards believed her. "Take him to his chambers," she ordered. "Call the royal healers." They obeyed without question, lifting the king's weak body and carrying him away. Amara watched them go, her heart pounding, not with fear, but with anticipation. Soon, her father would wake up and love her more than anyone else. Soon, she would finally have everything. But as the door to his chambers slammed shut, a small doubt crept into her heart. What if something was wrong? She couldn't wait. She had to be sure. That evening, under the cover of darkness, she left the palace. The night was cold, the moon half hidden behind thick clouds. Amara's cloak billowed behind her as she hurried through the dense forest. The journey to the witch doctor's hut had never felt this long before. When she finally burst through the door, her face was tight with fear and anger. "You deceived me," she hissed. "The potion didn't make him love me. It made him ill." The witch doctor sat calmly, his bony fingers tapping on the wooden table. His hut smelt of dried herbs and something darker, something rotten. His thin lips curled into a small smile. "Calm yourself, princess," he said smoothly. "Calm," she snapped. "My father is sick. What did you give me?" The old man chuckled, shaking his head. "You worry too much. The king is fine. His body is only adjusting. Soon, he will see you as his most beloved daughter. Soon, you will have everything you desire." Amara's shoulders relaxed slightly, but doubt still lingered in her eyes. "Are you sure?" she pressed. The witch doctor nodded. "Go home, princess. Wait. And trust me." Amara took a deep breath, hesitated for only a moment, then turned and left. As soon as the door swung shut behind her, the witch doctor's soft smile twisted into a grin. Then he laughed. Not a quiet chuckle, but a deep, thunderous laugh that filled the small hut. "Spoilt brat, so ignorant, she thinks she can have it all." He shook his head, amusement dancing in his dark eyes. "Do you think you or Adanna will ever be Queen of Udi?" His laughter grew louder. "The throne of Udi belongs to Chief Chidi." This had always been the plan. Chief Chidi had promised him something far greater than gold. When Chidi took the throne, he would make the witch doctor the eye of the gods, the most powerful spiritual leader in Udi. His word would be law. His power would be absolute. And that was why he had helped him. That was why he had given Amara the poison that would weaken the king. The kingdom has forgotten, but tradition has not. Long ago, it had been decided. If King Afam had no male heir, his first daughter could rule, but only if she was married and must be crowned queen before the death of the king. But Adanna? She was too strong, too different, too feared. No man would ever marry her. And without marriage, she could never be queen. And that meant one thing. The throne of Udi would fall to the next ruling family. Chief Chidi's family. The elders knew this. The witch doctor knew this. But Amara was unaware. She was drowned in her own selfish interest. And Chief Chidi had never forgotten. That was why he had helped Amara. That was why he had fueled her hatred against Adanna. Because as long as the two princesses fought each other, the throne would be left unguarded. And when the time was right, Chief Chidi would take it. The potion Amara had given her father was never meant to make him love her. It was meant to weaken him, to make him frail, to push the kingdom into chaos. And in that chaos, the real enemy would rise. The witch doctor's smile faded as he stared into the flickering fire in front of him. "The game has begun," he murmured. "Let the daughters of the king destroy each other, so the rightful ruler can claim what is his." And with that, he threw his head back and laughed again. The morning air was cold, but the stares of the villagers were colder. As Adanna stepped through the village gates, the people turned, watching her, whispering. Then, slowly, the whispers turned to laughter. Cruel. mocking. Heartless. A woman pointed at her and spat on the ground. She's still a monster. A man chuckled, shaking his head. She left to cleanse herself and still came back cursed. The gods have rejected her. A beast like her can never rule Udi. The words stabbed into her like thorns, piercing the small hope she had carried in her heart. She had left hoping to find acceptance. She had returned stronger, wiser, ready to fight for her place. But to them, she was still nothing. Adanna held her head high, swallowing the lump in her throat. She would not let them see her pain. But deep inside, she was bleeding. Then she saw the palace gates. She pushed forward, ignoring the whispers, her heart pounding with a new fear. Something was wrong. The guards at the gates were tense, their faces tight with worry. She barely got the words out before one of them spoke first. "Princess, your father, he is gravely ill." Her world stopped. No, not him. Without another word, Adanna ran. The moment she stepped into the king's chamber, her breath caught in her throat. Her father, the mighty king of Fam, the man who had once stood like an unshakable mountain, was now barely a shadow of himself. He lay on his bed, his skin pale, his breath slow and weak. The room smelt of burning incense and bitter herbs, a desperate attempt from the healers to keep death away. Adanna staggered forward, her knees threatening to give way. She had faced the river of shadow and the weight of rejection her whole life. But nothing prepared her for the sight of her father like this. Tears blurred her vision as she knelt beside him, taking his frail hand into hers. "Father?" His fingers barely moved. His eyes, once sharp and wise, fluttered open. For a moment, they focused on her. And then a whisper. "Adanna." Her heart clenched. She squeezed his hand, as if holding on to him could keep him from slipping away. "I'm here, father. I came back." A single tear rolled down her cheek, falling onto his hand. He tried to speak again, but his voice was too weak. She saw it in his eyes, the pain, the regret, the love. And then a sound behind her. Laughter. Adanna turned sharply, and there stood Amara. Dressed in fine royal robes, her golden jewelry gleaming, she leaned against the doorway with a smile. And then she laughed. A cruel, mocking laugh. "Look at you," Amara ridiculed. Adanna's body shook, not with fear, but with rage. "Where did you go, sister?" Amara asked, stepping forward. "To the gods? To beg them to make you beautiful?" She circled her like a predator stalking its prey. "But look at you." Her voice was thick with fake pity. "Still ugly. Still cursed." The words stabbed deep, reopening old wounds. Adanna had faced cruelty before. But this was her own blood. Then Amara's expression darkened. Her voice dropped, turning sharp as a dagger. "You have brought a curse upon our father." Adanna's stomach twisted. "What?" Amara's eyes glistened with fake sorrow, but her lips curled in triumph. "You are a witch, Adanna. You left, and now our father is dying. This is your fault." Adanna felt her breath catch. The guards behind her shifted uncomfortably, their eyes flickering with doubt. The villagers' whispers outside grew louder. "She's cursed. She brought death back with her. The gods have abandoned her." Adanna's hands clenched into fists. This was Amara's doing. She had poisoned their father. She had turned the kingdom against her. And now, she was trying to bury her alive. Adanna's chest heaved, rage burning in her veins. But she would not fall into Amara's trap. Not yet. Adanna walked away, but the moment she reached her chamber and the door closed behind her, she broke. She collapsed onto the floor, her shoulders shaking as tears streamed down her face. She wept and wept, the weight of pain, betrayal, and regret crushing her chest. "I should have never left." Her fingers dug into the floor as her sobs filled the empty room. "I should have stayed to watch over father." She knew Amara had something to do with his sickness. She could see it in her eyes, hear it in her voice. Why is my own sister so wicked? Her mind burned with rage and sorrow. And now, Amara had called her a witch, turning the people against her even more. Then a whisper in her mind. "Princess Adanna, your greatest battle is yet to come." The boy's words echoed through her thoughts like a prophecy unfolding before her. She gasped for air, gripping her chest. Then another voice. Soft. Familiar. Haunting. The sun does not fight the stars to shine, it waits for its time to rise. Her mother. Adanna's chest tightened as a fresh wave of tears escaped her eyes. Mother, what does it mean? She had wanted so badly to prove herself, to be strong, to be worthy. But now she felt lost. Alone. Her thoughts drifted to Nkem. His gentle smile. His words of encouragement. His unwavering belief in her. I need you, Nkem. But Nkem was gone. And she was alone. She buried her face in her hands and wept until sleep finally took her. The next morning, in the dim glow of dawn, Chief Chidi arrived at the palace. The guards let him in without question. They knew he had powerful influence. He walked briskly through the halls. Inside Amara's chamber, the princess sat in a tense silence, her hands clenched into fists. She barely acknowledged Chidi as he entered, her mind clouded with worry. This wasn't the plan. Chidi raised an eyebrow, taking a seat beside her. What do you mean? Amara's voice was tight with frustration. The portion the witch doctor gave me, it's making my father weaker. He's not supposed to be this sick. Chief Chidi leaned back, unfazed. Do not panic, princess. He gave a small smile. The potion needs time to bind his spirit. It must weaken his will before it can take effect. Soon, the king's heart will belong to you. Amara stared at him, doubt flickering in her eyes. Are you sure? Chidi's smile widened. You have my word. Slowly, Amara's expression softened. She took a deep breath, then smiled back. Thank you, Chief Chidi, for your support. Chidi nodded, then leaned closer. But now, you must focus on winning the villagers' hearts. If you gain their trust before the king recovers, then no one will question you as queen. Amara's smile grew wider. You're right. If the people love me, they will stand by my side, even against Adanna. Then she paused, her smile fading slightly. But what about Adanna? She leaned in, lowering her voice. Now that father is ill, and the villagers don't love her, won't she seek out Nkem? She will be lonely. Chief Chidi's eyes darkened. He sat up straighter, his voice firm. You must never allow that to happen. Amara's eyes narrowed. Why? Chidi leaned in, lowering his voice to a whisper. There is something you do not know. Amara frowned, waiting. The family of Nkem was innocent of the accusation that led to their banishment. The crime they were accused of? It was all a lie. Amara's eyes widened. A lie, she whispered. Chidi nodded. If Adanna ever learns the truth, if she ever finds Nkem, it could destroy everything. Amara's body tensed. Chidi's voice turned cold. Make sure she is watched at all times. Do not let her be alone for too long. And most importantly, he looked Amara dead in the eyes. Do not let Adanna and Nkem reunite. If she finds love, she finds power. And if she finds power, your chance to be queen is over. Amara's fingers tightened around the golden rings on her hands. A slow, knowing smile spread across her face. She will never find him. Chidi nodded approvingly. He walked out of the palace, a smile curling on his lips. Everything was falling into place like a game of Udo, each move bringing him closer to the throne. Amara thought she was in control, but she was nothing more than a foolish child playing with fire. She didn't understand the weight of tradition. She didn't know that no matter how hard she fought, she could never be queen. Because when King Afam breathed his last, the throne would not go to Adanna or Amara. It would belong to the elders, to the council, to him. Chief Chidi, the rightful ruler of Udi. His smile deepened as he walked into the shadows, leaving chaos in his wake. Inside the palace, Amara sat in deep thought. Adanna had been too quiet, too obedient. She had expected her sister to fight back, to challenge her, to demand answers. Instead, Adanna spent her days beside their father, whispering words of regret. That silence worried her. She needed to watch her closely. She turned to Obinna, one of the most trusted palace servants. From now on, you must spy on Adanna, she ordered. Obinna bowed. Yes, princess. I want to know where she goes, who she speaks to, and what she does when no one is watching. Obinna hesitated. What if she does nothing suspicious? Amara's eyes darkened. Then we will make sure it stays that way. Every day, Adanna sat by her father's bed, holding his weak, trembling hands. Every day, she whispered the same words. I should have never left. Tears filled her eyes as she watched the man who had once commanded the kingdom's struggle to even keep his eyes open. I should have stayed. I should have protected you. Her father's fingers twitched, his lips parting slightly. She leaned closer, desperate for his voice. Father? His breath came in ragged gasps. Then a whisper. Amara, she. Adanna's heart pounded. She knew what he was trying to say. She could see it in his weak, clouded eyes. Her sister had poisoned him. But just as she braced herself for the truth, his voice failed him. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she watched his eyes flutter shut again. He wanted to warn her, but the poison had stolen his strength. Adanna wiped her tears, her heart burning with determination. I will not let this go. Far away, in the quiet village of Umuoma, Nkem sat under a tree, his gaze fixed on the sky. He thought of her. Adanna. Not the princess the world mocked and feared, but the girl only he knew. He smiled. They don't know her laughter. They don't know the way she tilts her head when she is thinking. They don't know how strong she is, not just in body, but in heart. But I do. Then his smile faded. Is she okay? Has she found what she was looking for? His chest tightened. Will she ever be queen? Just then, he overheard a trader speaking nearby. In 3 market days, I will be going to Udi to buy goods. Nkem rushed to her. Please, I beg you, deliver a message to Princess Adanna. The woman hesitated. The palace is guarded. Just try, Nkem pleaded. Tell her. I love her. I miss her. And I am in Umuoma, waiting for her. The woman sighed, then nodded. I will try. When the woman reached Udi Palace, she was stopped at the gate. The guard on duty? Obina, Amara's spy. I have a message for Princess Adanna, the woman said. Obina smiled politely. I will deliver it for you. Tell her that Nkem loves her and misses her, the woman said. And that he is in Umuoma. Obina nodded. I swear, the princess will hear your words. The woman smiled and left, believing her job was done. But the moment she disappeared, Obina turned away. Not toward Adanna's chambers, but toward Princess Amara. Amara's eyes widened in shock as Obina whispered Nkem's message. Then she smiled. A slow, wicked smile. She reached into her golden chest and pulled out a bag of coins. She tossed it to Obina. You have done well. Obina bowed. Thank you, princess. Amara leaned in, her voice dangerously low. Now listen carefully. Adanna must never leave the palace for Umuoma. Obina frowned. And if she tries? Amara's eyes darkened. Stop her. No matter what it takes. She stood, her voice a whisper of poison. If Adanna finds Nkem, I will lose everything. Obina nodded. And what about the message? Should I tell anyone? Amara's lips curled into a smirk. Tell no one. She turned to the window, watching the clouds darken over Udi. Adanna will never know he is waiting for her. One evening, the elders of Udi gathered in the palace, their faces solemn. The air inside the king's chamber was heavy, thick with tension and unspoken truths. Seated at the head of the room was Alawu, the oldest and wisest of the elders. His aged eyes held the weight of generations of tradition. Beside him sat Chief Chidi, his expression unreadable, but the small glint in his eyes betrayed his excitement. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The moment Udi's future would be sealed. The doors creaked open. Adanna walked in, her head held high, followed closely by Amara. She knew why they had called her. She was ready to fight for her throne. She was ready to defend her right. But she had no idea that today, her world would come crashing down. Alawu cleared his throat, his deep voice commanding silence. Princess Adanna, the Council of Elders and Chiefs have gathered today to remind you of the laws that govern our land. Adanna remained calm, her hands clasped before her. Go on. Alawu continued, his gaze unwavering. Our king is very sick, and the throne has remained vacant for too long. According to the laws of Udi, if a king has no male heir, his first daughter may take the throne. He paused, his next words hanging like a blade over Adanna's head. But only if she is married. The room was silent. Adanna's fingers tightened slightly, but she gave no reaction. She had expected this. She had known this. Alawa leaned forward. And Princess, tradition also states that you must be crowned before the passing of the king. If the king dies before your coronation, the throne will pass to the next ruling family. Adanna nodded slowly. I understand. Then, a voice broke through the silence. What if Adanna fails? All heads turned toward Amara. She sat back casually, a smug smile playing on her lips. If Adanna cannot provide a husband, or if she is not crowned before the king takes his last breath, then the throne belongs to me, right? A slow silence fell over the room. Then Alawa sighed. He turned his gaze toward Chief Chidi. And at that moment, Adanna saw it. A flicker of something dark in Chidi's eyes. Something that made her chest tighten. Alawu turned back to Amara, his voice heavy. No, Princess Amara. That is not the way of Udi. The smile vanished from Amara's face. What? She whispered. Her fingers curled against her lap, her entire body stiffening. Alawa's next words shattered her world. If Adanna fails to marry and be crowned before the king's death, the throne will go to Chief Chidi's family. Silence. Amara's breath hitched. Her hands began to shake. She blinked once. Twice. Then, she let out a shaky laugh. No, that can't be true. She turned to Chief Chidi, expecting him to deny it. But he remained silent. And then he smiled. A slow, knowing smile. Amara felt the world tilt beneath her feet. This was never about me, she whispered. She had been a fool. She had believed that she was next in line. She had believed that Chief Chidi was on her side. But he had played her. All this time, she had been fighting Adanna, while Chief Chidi was waiting to steal everything from both of them. Her heart pounded in her chest. Her fingers dug into her skin. All this time she had been fighting Adanna, hating her, trying to destroy her. And all this time, she had been fighting the wrong enemy. She had helped Chief Chidi poison her father. She had helped turn the people against Adanna. She had done everything he asked, all because she thought he was helping her. But now she saw the truth. She turned back to the elders. There must be a mistake. My father is still alive. I am still a princess. Enough. Alawa's voice was final. This is the law, and the law cannot be changed. The council of elders and chiefs stood from their seats, their faces unreadable. The meeting was over. The decision had been made. Adanna remained seated, her hands clenched into fists on her lap. Amara, however, sat frozen, her body trembling. Her world had collapsed in an instant. No one looked at her. No one spoke to her. Not even Chief Chidi. As they all filed out of the king's chamber, she could barely feel her own feet as she stood. She didn't know how she got to her chamber. All she knew was the pain in her chest. And when the door closed behind her, she collapsed. Tears poured down Amara's face as she clutched her chest. What have I done? She whispered, her voice broken. I let jealousy consume me. She had spent years hating Adanna. She had called her a monster. She had laughed when the villagers mocked her. She had helped Chief Chidi poison their father, all because she thought she was meant to be queen. But now she had nothing. She had betrayed her sister, betrayed her father. And for what? For a lie. Her hands shook as she wiped her face. How do I make this right? She thought of Adanna, of the sister who once held her hand as they ran through the palace gardens. The sister who had defended her when other children teased her. The sister who had loved her despite everything. And she had thrown it all away. The pain was too much. She couldn't live with this. She didn't deserve to. Her eyes flickered to the small wooden box on her table. Inside it was the potion from the witch doctor. The same poison she had slipped into her father's drink. She picked it up with shaking hands. Slowly, she poured the dark liquid into a goblet. Mother, if you can hear me, forgive me. Her voice cracked. I have failed you. I have failed father. I have failed myself. She lifted the goblet to her lips. Her hands trembled. Her eyes squeezed shut. She was about to drink.